All right, that this is being webcast. So if you maybe know someone who wanted to come today and couldn't make it, we have workshop for calendar year 2019 annual emissions reporting, or AER reporting. My name is Eugene Kang. I work in the annual emissions reporting group. Today will be available for questions later. Today's goal, the objective of this workshop today, will be to give you a good overview of the program, your general requirements, in general, kind of getting some familiarity with the web tool, the reporting tool, and then try to go over some questions and answers from the audience and afford most of the time for the latter part of the workshop just to have any of you come down if you want to work with our staff, which will be coming in about an hour or hour and a half from now, to answer any questions that are specific to your facility, or even to work on the computer when you exit the auditorium. If there's an evacuation called, exit to the back of the building, not to the front. In the event that you need to shelter in place, such as an earthquake, please drop and cover your heads until it's safe to evacuate. And lastly, remember to please put your cell phone on vibrate or silent so you don't disrupt anyone during the workshop. Okay, so as I said, we'll be giving a program overview. A lot of things changed from last year to this. Look at it when Mani gives you the hands-on, or I'm sorry, the live demonstration of the web tool. Go over a couple of frequently asked questions, and then again, Mani will kind of go through the live demonstration of the web tool. Then we'll open up the floor for questions and answers, and then again, most of the time we'd be afforded for any of you to come down if you wish to ask questions about your facility or actually work into your report. Okay, so our annual emissions reporting program is implemented pursuant to our South Coast AQMD Rule 301, specifically Subdivision E. Under this program, applicable facilities are required to report both annual emissions from both permanents and ozone depleting compounds. Facilities required to report an annual emissions report if any of the following occur. If their annual emissions are greater than or equal to 4 tons per year of either VOCs, specific organics, nitrogen oxides, sulfur oxides, or PM regulation. And lastly, you're also required to report if you get notified by the district. I mentioned something about the AB 2588 facilities. Facilities that are subject to AB 2588 have some additional reporting requirements compared to facilities that are just AER. Both AER facilities and AB 2588 facilities must report specified criteria pollutants, toxic air contaminants, and a shorter list of toxic air contaminants and ozone depleting compounds. These are all reported annually and are assessed a fee if applicable. However, for AB 2588 facilities, there's an additional reporting of a longer list of toxics once every 4 years, approximately 177 of them. I also mentioned the CTR facilities, California Air Resources Board, so in the web tool you can figure out if you're designated as CTR or AB 617, I think is what it's actually labeled in the web tool, or if you were designated as AB 2588. The top box shows what, if you're an AB 2588 facility and what phase you're in. I can go over that a little bit later. Well, actually, I'll just go over it now. Again, I said that you have to report once every 4 years a longer list of toxics, so there are 4 phases. If you are phase it is for that year, then you will be subject to the longer list of toxics. The box below shows If you're also categorized as a CTR facility or AB 617, 80 tons per year, or if you're designated as a high pressure, does provide some exemptions for small dry cleaners and small businesses, and its calculated emissions are less than 2 tons per year for specific toxics. Facilities will also need to select the exemption button when you go through the tool. So again, if you fall under this category, please remember to select that box. Okay, so emissions data, what is it used for? We receive it. It's used for a variety of activities. So it's used for compliance verification, for multiple programs, multiple rules, permit conditions, the federal Title V program, and also our reclaim program for NOx and SOx. It also helps project revenue needed to support other air quality programs that are implemented by the district. Okay, so when is the due date for the report and payment this year, if applicable? Well, 301 states that emission reports are due no later than the 75th day of the calendar year. That year, the 75th day falls on a Sunday, and so we've moved it up to the first or the next South Coast AQMD working day, which is March 17th. Reports will be due by no later than 5 o'clock that day. Something different that's going to make it a little bit easier this year to make the deadline. And I can go into that in a little bit in the next couple of slides. If you still have to pay by physical check, we still have that option available. Option if you wanted to drop off the check or send a messenger instead of sending in. The address is here, and so please make note of that. Okay, so that's kind of a wrap-up in general what the program is about. Reporting requirements and the deadlines for this year. We'll go over a lot of stuff that is new this year. I think this slide here, this might have been part of your insert or your insert when you got notified to report. Also had an AER webpage link that does provide what's new for this year. Again, for AB 2588 facilities, the quadrennial reporting year is going to be for those that are in phase 1A, so please make note of that. I did kind of touch on the electronic certification and AER report submittals. I have a couple of slides that will go over that. The Streamline online fee payment as well. Something new this year that was not available in past years is available to submit electronic amendments for your AER reports. However, that feature is only available for six that are in a couple more slides as well. As usual, emission fee rates, we have our typical increases based on CPI, but we do also have new toxic fees, again, which I'll go over in the next couple of slides. Stuff you can find on our website. We do have kind of... Okay, so let me elaborate on what I mean by no more hard copy submittal, copy-wise, as far as the report is concerned. We've also replaced the signature page with a certify and submit process. In previous years, a facility needed to first send a copy of their fee summary form after they submitted their report electronically. That would be sent to billing services, which you would have to wait for an invoice to be generated and sent back to you, and then reference that invoice number during your payment process when you go into our online payment portal. That's no longer the case. Once you submit your report and you need to pay and you pick an option, the invoice is automatically generated. It's going to be working in the background, so that will allow you to go straight into the online payment portal. You'll be able to do everything in one step. So again, that probably should help in addition to the fully electronic submittal of the report for making the whole process more seamless and quicker. And again, if you are going through this process and you're familiar with it, as far as the hard copies or submittals are concerned, we have gotten questions, even though it appears to be, and we go over it and say it's pretty seamless. Please give us a call if you're encountering problems. This is the first year, so we're expecting to hear calls from you guys. I'll give you our hotline and our email information later so you can contact us, but I don't want you guys, just because I'm saying that it's easier and streamlined, to feel that you can't give us a call and ask us if we can step you through it. So the Streamline online fee payment, this is a screenshot of what you'll see at two payment options. As far as a Streamline online fee payment, that icon there is what will take you straight to the portal. Again, you won't need to obtain an invoice. It's already going to be generated for you. So when you go to the next step, it'll ask you if you want to check or select e-check or credit card for your payment option. If you choose e-check, there's no convenience fee connected to that. However, if you use a credit card, there is a 2.25% convenience fee. After you make those selections, you'll be asked to print and submit. You will receive a confirmation of report submittal. I'll go over a little bit about the expanded list of reportable toxics. So these additional toxics were added this past summer to Table 4 of Rule 301. Diesel PM has been added as a toxic. It now has a fee threshold. And the other 40 or so additional toxics are not really new toxics. They've always been in the system. You've always been able to select it to report through. However, it's just kind of highlighting that there's a more accurate way to report PAHs, chlorinated dioxins, dibenzofurans, and POMs. The reason why that's important is because I did say that we have new toxic fee thresholds this year. Some of these speciates that you will pick for these general families have it's a lesser toxicity. So your fees, if you have information that substantiate the speciates, will result in lower toxic fees. So if you have that information, we encourage you to please report through those speciates. Okay, so similar to previous year, a CPI base fee increase has also been applied for all pollutants that have fee threshold. Just want to highlight that in order for these fees to be effective, the facility must either exceed criteria pollutant thresholds or be an AB 2588 facility or be a CTR facility. So you might see the whole calculation and think that you owe toxic fees, but again, you will not be charged unless you trigger one of these criterions. I talked about the flexibility on the use of source test results. Rule 301 added some flexibility. Before this year's report, source test results had to be approved by the district prior to being used in an annual emissions report. For this year's report and going forward, facilities will be able to use results from a source test in the AER report so long as the source test has been submitted for review and approval before the AER submittal due date. So if you have more questions on that, you can ask our staff, but it is kind of a pretty distinct or big change. It does allow a lot of flexibility, and so you just have to remember, make sure to submit that source test report for review and approval before the due date, because otherwise it's going to be similar to previous years. We won't be able to report the calendar year 2019 annual emissions report. As long as you submit those or that source test report for review and approval, just submit it. It doesn't have to be completely reviewed and approved. You just have to submit it to the district for review and approval before the deadline for this 3 years report. That's right. Tests that you're going to be using for emission factors in your report will be considered valid unless you're otherwise notified. So if you are notified and the results indicate that maybe you underreported because the emission factor is higher, you will have to pay for whatever the fees would be associated with the underreported amount. However, the relief that's provided is that you will not be charged surcharges or late payments, fees. So, again, yes, so this is just more kind of data entry and what you're able to use as far as what, the data for your report. That's all still going to be electronic, and that's still going to be allowed to be submitted electronically. This source test results or report for review and approval is a separate process. That gets submitted to our source test division here at the district. And you just need to make sure that you have record that you submit it for review and approval. It's case by case. I don't know if we have any source testing folks in the audience, but they are working on a more streamlined, more efficient process. And so I can talk to you later. I do know that there's a presentation that's available online on what the plans are for the turnaround on source tests. And so I can show you the website maybe after we finish the presentation. Okay, so for the reporting process, I just want to make sure everyone understands that, that instructions are available. We have a help and support page. We also have an FAQs page on our AER webpage, so you can always refer to that. But generally, the reporting process entails first completing inputs for your facility information, listing all the fuel types combusted by any emission-generating equipment during that report year, listing and defining all the emissions for their associated processes for when the tool calculates those emissions. I just want to remind everyone to please review all your data before you submit, and to upload any supporting documents such as MSDSs or SDSs, source test results, deadline, and then just keep all your records in case your facility gets audited. Sure. So it depends on how you uploaded the file. I'm not sure if you remember, but there's like a date range that it asks for when how long it's going to be valid. If you post, I'll just run through a couple of frequently asked questions before we go to our live demonstration. A lot of facilities ask what emissions should they report. The generic answer is all emissions from stationary and portable sources from both permitted and non-permitted equipment. That sounds like it's overly comprehensive, so it might be easier to go over what you shouldn't report. You're not required to report any mobile sources, so no on-road, off-road vehicles, utility equipment, lawnmowers, leaf blowers, clean air solvents, and also non-combustion char broilers and deep fat fryers operated by restaurants and eateries. Supporting documentation, again, there is that feature, and Monty will go over your continuous emissions monitoring systems data, source tests, MSDSs, SDSs, any other type of literature or documentation you have for emission factors. Go ahead, question? I think it's
facilities that, let's say you have so I guess as Eugene indicated, this is mostly for facilities that are basically doing fat frying at the commercial scale. Let's say you have a production line, you're a food processing facility. So at the commercial scale, you're doing a lot of fat frying.
Okay,
then
my question is, where does commercial scale start?
I guess
all food service that produce fried products use a fryer. So where does it not become commercial?
I guess this is probably captured under our Rule 219 exempts equipment that are, those thresholds are provided there. If the equipment is small, it doesn't require a permit. But that's, yes. And I suggest reaching out to our permitting division for any permitting applicability determination.
This is Tracy over here. I guess one way to look at it, commercial versus non-commercial, is if you have an eatery that's like your corner burger hut, they're actually serving people, they have customers, that would not be considered commercial. Commercial is more about,
yeah. Right. Cooking for, like you go to your regular restaurant, you're cooking for someone, you're selling it directly to the consumer. Right. You can't, then go ahead and contact shop.
Live tool, so we can just follow the process step by step. I guess before talking about the tool itself, there are a few items that we would like to point out or remind you about. The way our reporting tool is set up is to capture emissions at the device level. And sometimes this is not consistent with the way your facility or your operation is permitted. Sometimes our permitting division aggregates some of the emission devices into one permit unit. It can be aggregated into one permitted unit, but when you report it, it needs to be divided or separated to the dryer and the printing press. And this is because how the emission is calculated. Every year before, the first year that you report, the entire permit profile for your facility is uploaded. From that point on, basically you'll be in charge. If your facility goes through modification, you get new equipment permitted or some of the equipment or shop. The way I usually describe it is that the tool has two ends. The front end is your facility configuration, your equipment, your permitted equipment, and your equipment configuration. The back end is your throughput information and emission information, which changes every year. The front part, once you set it up, and if your facility doesn't go through modification, it doesn't change, always remain the same. The report submission, and in certain instances, you can submit your payment electronically. As far as how the emission gets reported to the tool, to standardize how emissions are reported, we define certain classification for the equipment that you report. And these classifications are as following. We have external combustion sources. Boiler, heater, dryer that you operate fall under that category. Internal combustion sources, engines, turbines, microturbines. Storage tanks is an EPA tank software is using EPA AP42 guideline chapter 7, and that guideline has been recently updated, and the updates were adopted in November of last year. But the tool, the EPA software, is not complying with those changes. And at this point, because those changes happened late last year, for this year reporting, for 2019, you're allowed to use EPA tanks while we're looking into other solutions to address those changes. Fugitive components, valves, flanges at facilities that are subject to Rule 1173-76, which perform quarterly leak detections, need to report under fugitives. None of the above would be other process. And also any emissions associated with your non-routine activities. If you have a spill of a fuel at your site, if your processes, enter their throughput and select the pollutants and enter the emission factors. The main features of our tool are as following. The first year that you report, the following years you can transfer or import your previous year configuration. Remember, the front end of the reporting and emission factors, every year you can transfer it from the previous year. And you can classify your emission sources. I went through the classifications just a few seconds ago. You can define multiple processes, which I'll explain what process means shortly. Ability to classify your permitted versus non-permitted equipment. The tool is intuitive. It calculates or performs some unit conversions within the tool if you to make your throughput consistent with the emission factors you enter. And you'll be able to see your criteria, toxics, and if you select greenhouse gas emissions for each device and one central location. There are some built-in supporting documents to use for your emission calculations into the tool. So if in the future you need to The tool gives you capability of calculating greenhouse gas emissions for only your combustion devices using the state default emission factors. If you report your some unit conversions, and the most important feature is the tool provides you different summary windows so you can perform internal QA/QC, which I'll explain in details when I get to that point. The tool demonstrations, I still stick to the slides for next two topics. If you're reporting for the first time, the first step to do is go into the reporting tool and create a user account. And similar to any email account or any account that you create online, there is a registration button, register here in orange. And you click on it, it prompts you to this page where you enter some basic contact information. You select the username and password, and you sign up. You get to this page, which is a confirmation hours. That link expires, so you need to contact us to activate your account. Without the activation, if you try to log in, it's not going to recognize you. If you forget your password, similar to your email account, you can go to the orange button on the first page of the tool. The blue link. Click here to reset your password. Then you need to enter the password, the email address you provided when you created your account, and press send. The tool is going to send you a link. If it doesn't recognize your email address, it's going to give you an error message in the red box that no record was found. And similar to your email account, when you press reset, you get a link via email. You click on it. It prompts you to a page where you change your password. Now I would like to switch to the live software for a demonstration. So in order to access the reporting tool, if you go to Salco's page, where after creating your user account, you log in. For the purpose of this demonstration, I'm using a different server because I'm going to show you the online portal for the payment, and that communicates with our finance system, so we don't want to use our live system. So I created an account, I log in. The user account that you generate is just for you to use. In order to access the facility that you're reporting for, you need the facility ID, which is assigned to the facility when you receive a permit from the district, and a PIN that is generated by the AER team. It's worthy to mention that anybody with an active user account, which you just saw, it's going to take 5 minutes to generate, can access your facility with that facility ID and PIN. So I guess whoever you share that information with can access to your account, so be cautious. And if you use consulting services, if you switch consultants, you want to change your PIN, go ahead, contact us, we can change your PIN. So I'm going to access a facility that I created. Yes. No, it's just for our program. No. So every year you receive a letter from AER group with your facility ID and PIN information. That's the active PIN, and the facility ID, it's your social, it's the user account for you as a person. The facility profile will be accessed with the facility ID and the PIN that is generated. The PIN remains the same unless you reach out to us telling us, hey, I want to change our PIN. Only for AER. No. No. No problem. If you feel, uncomfortable, we recommend that. If, people are not with your company, if they have the PIN they can access, you can just email us, and we can go ahead and change the PIN for you. And just as a caveat, we're in the process of looking into other options to add more security in the future. So once you log into your facility, you see your facility ID information up in this page, and you see the history of the facility or the previous submittals. In case of this facility, as you see, they've been in the program for since 2012. Once you're added to the tool, that means that you need to report. And the status for the first 2 years is work is in progress. That indicates that nobody submitted. Previous people, meaning that I started some work. The first time that you log in before nobody has touched the report, the status is available. So that indicates that it was added, nobody has touched it. Go ahead.
Hold on. Just so members from the audience can hear the questions, also those folks who are on the webcast, we're going to pass around mics. So if you can hold on until you get your mic to ask the question.
How long does this system go back for
So
previous
this,
submittals?
Yes, this reporting tool.
And the second question is, how long do you, if you're not if you don't qualify for the thresholds to do this reporting, how long does that last? Or do you still have to report that you're not a reportable entity?
I guess the first question, how many years are going to be here? First of all, the years that you see here are the years that you were asked to report, or we determined that you're required to report. As far as how many years, let's say your facility is a big refinery, they're always into reporting from the beginning of time. This reporting tool report in this system. But in 2014 reporting year, in 2015, it was mandatory. So if you reported voluntarily the first year, and from that point on, you should be able to see reports starting from 2013 going forward. Again, the server that I'm using is for testing purposes, so that's why you see 2012. So if you're a real facility, a real major source facility that has been in the programs from beginning of time, you should be able to see 13 going forward to 19. As far as exemptions, we look into it on a case-by-case basis. Again, Eugene went through the applicability. If the facility is subject to reporting based on SACO's AQMD requirement, which is the 4-ton thresholds for criteria pollutants and 100 tons for carbon monoxide. If your facility is reporting below those thresholds, and we look in the facility, we may issue a 3-year exemption. But if you're subject to any state program, the CTR, which is the Uniform Reporting Regulation by State of California, or AB 2588, no matter what your emission is, you're always in the program unless you fall out of applicability for those programs. So I'm going to go ahead and access 2019 report. The first page that you're going to see after you log in is this page. The blue link indicates that import last year information. If you reported last year and you set up all the configuration, this link allows you to transfer all the facility configuration and setups that you made for last year into this year to minimize a lot of work. So once you set up, you can import it. One key factor that you need to keep in mind is if there is no previous year, or if you have a lapse, let's say 2017, you reported and you submitted. 2017 was added, but for some reason that report wasn't submitted or nobody even touched it. And you're at 2019, this function is gonna hiccup because it goes look at the previous year, it has blank. It doesn't have anything to transfer. So first step, you shouldn't have lapse. There should be a report configuration in the previous year. So I'm not gonna show that import because the main thing you need to keep in mind is once you press that, it's gonna overwrite whatever that you made in this report. it's going to wipe everything out and transfer last year into this year. So pretty much the time it takes depends on the black prompts you to the next page, which is and skip steps by using the shortcut links to the left. For the sake of this demonstration, so everybody see and here, if you're not, let's say, reclaim box, I don't need to go over it. I don't need to change it. Once anticipate your report configuration, contacts, everything is the same. Once you import from last year, that field needs to be filled out. So if you miss it, so we'll see what happens. And there are certain features of the tool that are activated by pressing these checkboxes. Not necessarily are applicable to you. I'll quickly go through them. If you would like to our tool to calculate emission, the greenhouse gas emissions from your combustions, calculation, but the reporting for greenhouse gases is done through the state of California, which is a different program than us. We just created that feature. So if you're not willing to use it, if you're not willing to report that information to us, don't check this box. If your facility generates electricity, has capability of generating electricity, you check this box. And you need to enter the nameplate of your generation, how many megawatts you generate, and a drop-down menu is provided to provide basically what type of generation facility is. This is more intended for facilities that have a power plant in their premises. If you have a little generator, backup generator, that doesn't really, apply. But if you have a little combined cycle, you have 2-3 megawatt power plant in your backyard, that's what the intention here is for.
Question on generation. When you say generation, is that
electricity?
Does that also include solar arrays?
That is a very good question. So I guess you can provide that information here, because usually when you have solar generation, it's not just little, this category. And the reason, let me just add one more thing. The reason that we have this set up, any of these checkboxes is going to kind of change what you see in the reporting section of the report. So having solar generation and renewable, not combustion, because there is no emissions associated to it, let the tool know that, hey, this is just generation capacity. Don't change the reporting because there is no emission calculation or there is no emission associated with the power generation. Go ahead.
So does it matter whether that generation from that solar array is something that you yourself in the business are using, or is it's just there and going back to the DWP?
Do you own it?
No.
Is it in your premises? You're leasing the land?
Yes, it is.
I guess, pretty much you can report it. It doesn't hurt. If you're not comfortable, don't report. Again, that has nothing to do with the emissions. We're just trying to address all the possible scenarios. Sometimes with the solar generations, there are some contractual agreement. Hey, you're leasing my land, whatever you do to it, I'm not going to report it. So that's the agreement between you and that party that put the solar panels there. But all good questions.
I have a question.
Sure.
He's talking solar panels.
Mm-hmm.
What about,
If you can hold on.
what about fuel cells?
Fuel cells, again, we try to, I guess it would go under, a non-fuel based, depending on, how you're sticking to those. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, that's a little confusing because it doesn't seem like you're definitive in what you're saying. You're saying you can report it if you want to, but it's up to it's between you and that other business or entity that owns the solar arrays.
No, I guess you indicated,
not
you
clear.
either want to, again, it's solar has nothing to do with the emission generation. There are categories provided here. You indicated you don't want to report the solar generation because it's owned by someone else. So that's what I indicated. You can, if there are, contractual agreement, if they report for it, somewhere else, don't report it.
I got a question for you.
And
How
I
does a
guess
photo- how does a
because,
photo-
let me, because, we have, limited time, if you don't mind, I can answer, that question if it's, site specific.
How does a photovoltaic system that has no emissions be required to be reported? I don't understand.
You're not reporting the emissions for it because facilities can have different generation, capabilities, different configuration. You're only reporting the configuration of your
Okay,
facility, not
okay.
emissions.
The
That's what I
generation capability.
indicated. That's why I indicated when you select non-fuel base generation, the tool knows there is no emissions from this, leave it off. Categories for fugitive emission. If you're a small business, the definition is provided in this in Rule 102, and Eugene covered what small business means in his section. You check this box. And the last one is, I would say, is the most important one, is for non-routine emissions. If you're trying to report offsets, you have fuel spill at the facility, you have an operation that has a startup and shutdown emissions, which is different than your normal operating emissions, then you check this box. And what it does is for that device that you're going to be reporting offset or startup and shutdown, it's going to add the features there for you to report non-routine emissions.
About a spill, a fuel spill.
If you have quantified it, I would say what we indicated, any emission that you have at your facility, permitted or non-permitted, and it's that feature was added. Let's say I have a combustion turbine. My startup and shutdown is totally different emission factors than your routine operation. So you can separate these two. But what that functionality does, let's say for all the equipment that you claim that you're going to have non-routine emissions, is going to add a feature, a section to the report to allow you to report that emission separately. Facility contact, there are 3 fields here for 3 contact information to provide it. Main facility contact, which is required. And the tool also allows you to provide additional contact personnels or additional roles. The most important one is the authorized facility representative. Usually this person is a plant manager, corporate official that has the authority to sign off documents. So if that person is different than your facility contact, you can provide that information. If it's this, also preparer was provided here. A lot of facilities. Average data confidentiality here, which you can indicate what information that you provide would like to be treated as confidential. Emissions data is not considered confidential. It's public information, and that information gets posted on our website. So when you enter any field, we have this change of ownership that you want to point out. You check this box, you provide the date that change of ownership occurred, the previous and new owner information. Change in the equipment location if you relocate it, because all this. And
Hi.
let me just.
I have a quick question on the ownership issue. Like, if there was a sale to another company during the year, what are the requirements for reporting? Are there going to be 2 separate reports from each facility ID?
No. Once we perform or once we send the notifications to the facility, we use the ID that was effective in our reporting in our permitting database. This happens usually at the end of the year, and the report is added to the tool. Is going to be take a close look at the situation. That rule, based on what they have, that rule is evolving, is changing. What they require is the owner of the facility before the reporting submittal due date is liable and responsible to report. But again, if you're not subject to that regulation, go ahead, contact us. We'll look into your situation in more details.
Okay.
And if your facility emission significant and other will be used if you would like to make any note about your report. So press next. In order for you to report any combustions within the tool, you need to report type of fuel that you combust. And this is done by clicking on the Add New Fuel, and it opens a drop-down menu with a list of different fuels in our tool. So I already have, as you saw, I already have natural gas added, diesel fuel added, and I'm going to add, for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to add another fuel. I'm going to add digester gas, and I'll save it. That's for facilities that have digesters and create methane there. I'll save that. So this is all the fuels. So if you don't add a fuel here, and if you're trying to report combustion from that fuel, you're not going to see that fuel. I'll show you where you're going to encounter that problem if you miss any fuels here. Press next. So right now I'm at emission sources. This is pretty much the last step of the front end, your facility configuration. Once I complete my emission sources, the front end is completed. If there is no modification to the facility, that part, you can use it every year for reporting purposes. As you see, certain devices are already here. The first year that you're asked to report, the entire permit profile is going to be there. But from that point on, as I indicated, you're in charge, so any changes, you need to implement that. For this demonstration, I'm going to add all these equipment already there. I'm going to add a new equipment. And let's say I would like to add a boiler. And it's a permitted. It wasn't in my original permit profile. I just got the permit from the district, and I would like to add it. You select permit, so the tool knows that it needs an application number and a permit number, which you can obtain from the permit that you receive from the district. I manually enter that. Let's say, just for the sake of demonstration, I put some numbers here. Then permit device ID and AER device ID. AER device ID is an ID specific to the tool itself that is automatically populated. You don't enter that. And emission source name. This is a field to allow you sometimes, and then because this device is not something that was uploaded by us, the permit device, profile information is not going to be asked to enter. The emission source name is a name that you can designate or enter into the tool. Let's say if you look at your permit, it says John Zink boiler, 500 million BTU per hour. It's not a name that you use on a day-to-day basis for that boiler. You may call it boiler A. So then this field allows you to put that custom name in. So when you look at your tool, you can recognize your piece of equipment based on the nomenclature that you use at your facility. Let's say I call it boiler A, and then you need to indicate the operating status. The operating status, if the equipment is up and operational, you select a normal operation. There are other features here. If, let's say, the equipment is there, you have a permit for it, but for some reason you didn't use it for an entire year, you can claim that it wasn't in operation. The other scenario that you may have is that piece of equipment was in your permit, but it doesn't generate any emissions. But permit engineer included there for the sake of completeness. Then you click on not generating emissions. That happens in refineries. They have big vessels associated with different processes. It doesn't per se, it's just a confined big tank with no emissions. So that's to address those type of equipment. Fugitive components, that's self-explanatory. Remember I told you The first time that you're asked to report, we upload the entire permit profile. Let's say this boiler A that I'm throwing in is replacing another boiler, or the permit information was changed, we modified it. Then the old boiler is not in operation. You can use the shutdown and removed feature here to indicate that piece of device is not operational, I'm taking it out, it's shut down. And then duplicate is for specific scenarios that, let's say you have equipments in series. Let's say I have 5 boilers fitting into one stack and I have a SIMS on the stack. I don't want to report 5 different numbers because my emission is monitored at the stack itself. I just want to report everything at one location. 5 boilers would be duplicate. Usually the stack is in your permit. You can report all the emission under the stack. So these are different possibilities that you can have. For the sake of my boiler, I just stick to the normal operation. It's normal operational.
So if you do have modification to a permit, and let's say you've modified it twice from previous years before, what do you put? There's no way of deleting that old permit anymore.
If the equipment was added by the district in the first upload, you cannot delete. But if you added it yourself after that first upload, you can delete it. But let's say, so technically for the scenario you just indicated, you're going to have the first upload, right? Let's say there are 2 modifications after that point. The first one, let's say 2 years ago, you added it. Now you can go back either modify that one or delete it and add the new one. So that way, the original submittal boiler is going to be there because you cannot, as you indicated, you cannot delete it. But there's going to be an additional. The old one, you're going to need to claim it as a shutdown removed, and you add the new one. So let's say if our engineers look at your report, they're going to figure out, oh, they took this out, now this is a new one. And then
So shut down and removed
you can use that feature.
is not necessarily meaning that, so let's say it's the same exact tool. It's, I guess it's in a sense, if that permit was modified, you're saying that the word removed is still accurate, even though it's still there.
The old one.
But it's an old
the old
permit
one that
number.
I'm not going to find on your permit. You're going to
Okay.
claim that as shutdown and removed because the initial submittal you cannot delete.
Okay.
And I guess, if you have a specific question to your configuration, you can always call our hotline. Our staff can give you a remedy specific for your situation. And the main reason for these features are to tell the reporting section of the tool that, hey, this equipment, am I going to need emission numbers for it or not? When you click duplicate shutdown, it knows this is shut down, no emission is going to be reported, so it doesn't ask for you in that back end. Categories, I guess I went through it in my slides. These are the categories that you need to select from, and my boiler is external combustion source. And then there are different categories for boilers are provided here. The reason for there is that our default toxic emission factors vary by type of boiler that you have. That's why we have this breakdown. Let's say my boiler is 200 million BTU, so I select this and I'll save it. And then it's going to know that it's an external combustion sources boiler greater than 100 million BTU. And you enter the capacity of the boiler, which is million BTU per hour. For the specific question that we had here for non-routine emissions, remember in the facility information, I checked the box that I want to report non-routine emissions. Clicking that trigger an option here for you to tell the tool, hey, for this piece of equipment, it's going to show up for all the devices, but you can indicate which piece of equipment I would like to report non-routine emissions. Let's say for the sake of this exercise, this is a huge boiler. Chances are the startup and shutdown, I have different emissions than normal operation. I'll check this box to let the tool know that, hey, I want to report the startup and shutdown or some sort of non-routine emission for this piece of equipment. So it's going to add it to back end of the tool. Save and return to the emission list. Different people like to, approach the report differently. Some people like to first set up their configuration. Some people like to set up a configuration for one device and report the emission so they just get it over with. Whatever, your preference is, you can basically follow by clicking the orange buttons down here. After saving, you can save and return to the equipment list, meaning that, hey, I want to compile all the devices first, or you can save and proceed to the process reporting, meaning that, hey, I created this device, now I want to report emissions for it, so I'll be done with it. So I'm going to click this option so we'll see the back end of this device. And once you click on that, it prompts you to this page. In the beginning of my part, we talked about a concept of process. Process is, you can define it as a specific type of activity associated with the device. Let me explain it better with an example. Let's say my boiler can run on both natural gas and digester gas. Depending on type of fuel you have, your emission factors are different. So you need to be able to distinguish between the two. So we added the concept of process. So you can define natural gas as a process for that device and digester gas as a different process. So then you can distinguish and enter different emission factors for that type of fuel. That makes reporting a lot easier. Otherwise, you have to do some sort of the aggregation calculation outside and put the numbers in. So for the sake of my example, I'm going to select a natural gas and a digester gas. So the first process, each device at least has one process. So once I add a device, a process is generated, process 1, I'll open it, and it prompts you to this page, which you have 4 boxes. The first one is more information about the process. You can put a name for the process. I'm going to just indicate as natural gas. Let me just put NG for sake of time. Remember I told you need to add your fuels. If you don't add any fuel, nothing is going to be provided here. So right off the bat, if you're reporting for your combustion sources and you click on the fuel drop-down menu here and you're missing it, you need to go to the combustion fuel link up here, add it so it appears here. So all the fuels that I want to report, which is natural gas and digester, are already selected, so I have no problem with that. Select natural gas. Rule number, the tool is intuitive. It's going to give you a drop-down menu that it thinks that are applicable to that piece of device that you selected. So you select whichever that is more representative or any of the one that is applicable. Let's say I just, click in a specific rule for just to speed up the process. And once you add the process, if the tool has default emission factors for toxic, it gives you this message, and it's going to populate all those default emission factors. So when you have defaults, we know we're expecting these type of toxics for that type of activity. And if you don't agree with some of those emission factors, you can enter on the open, you click on open button and change that number. Right now it shows default was selected. You uncheck the default, and let's say for that one I'm using a different source. I override it or change that number. And then you need to indicate where that emission factor, that number was taken from. Let's say this is from AQMD rule limit. Going back, you still, for your emission calculation, you need to report throughput, how much usage this equipment had. In case of this device, it's fuel consumption, and it runs on gas fuels. So it's going to be in a volume. Let's say I report 1,000 million SCAF. Remember, this is for the natural gas. I need to go back and report the digester gas too for it. for this example. And then it adds it, if you would like to use default emission factors for the criteria emissions, it doesn't automatically populate it because we know that usually on the criteria side, you may have more options. So we just don't want to fill out the blanks for you. But if you would like to use default, you click on the default and it populates it. If there are any default values in the system, it populates it. Again, the way I demonstrate the toxic, you can go to any of these and change that default. This facility is a reclaim. How many reclaim we had? One common mistake that I guess we encounter with the reclaim facilities. As you know, you guys get inspected every year. Inspector goes and look at all your emission sources and populates the number, and that information is shared with us. We look at, we compare what you report in your AER, what you reported to that program, and they need to be consistent. But they cannot per se be consistent because there are some different requirements. But to answer those discrepancies, you need to go to the NOx emission section. And sometimes some equipment at a reclaim facility, let's say this is a reclaim NOx. Sorry, most of folks may not follow my lingo, but just for the people that are in reclaim for just the next minute, I'm going to use their lingo. Let's say you're reclaim NOx. Not per se all the equipment that generate NOx emission in your reclaim facility are going to be subject to reclaim. Examples, flares at refineries are not reclaim sources. If you bring a portable equipment, your contractor operate less than 72 hours, they're not reclaim sources. Let's say if you had that case that you want to designate this equipment as not reclaim, you need to go to the NOx emission and uncheck reclaim. And it's going to open a window. This is new this year. And it's going to require to explain why you switched off reclaim. What's the benefit of this? When we do the comparison between reclaim program and your emissions in AER, we can go to the tool and see where the discrepancies are coming from. So we're not going to send you a letter, hey, there's a discrepancy, why? You already explained it here, so that saves you time there. This is a new feature we added, so we get that comparison more robust. So for this example, I'm going to leave the reclaim same as it is. So this is the first step. Now I'm going to quickly add the next process. To add the process, you go to your equipment list. This is my boiler A that I added. You click on reference. Now it brings you back to this page. Now you can add a process. So I'm going to keep this part quick. Now I guess I select OK. The first step, again, I'm repeating what I just did for natural gas. I call it DG. So it's a good repetition for you, so you follow the steps quickly now. The first one. TAC is populated. Yes, go ahead, populate TACs. Fuel combustion, let's say I just use 10 million SCAF of digester gas. And I'm going to just strictly use default emissions. Oh, what happened? When you click and nothing populates, what does that tell you? There's nothing. There's no default. Then I guess that emission factors need to be populated. So I'm going to just add quickly some numbers. Let's say I had a source test for this device, and that gives me all the emission factors. I'm going to just select that. Sorry, I guess I forgot to. It didn't take my selections. Source test. So, okay. So pretty much front end, I define my source. Back end, I reported throughput, reported emissions, emission factors. I'm pretty much done. So basically, you go through that exercise for all your devices. As I indicated, we upload your permitted equipment to the tool. If you're doing it for the first time, you need to look into, or basically think about other activities that you had at your facility that not per se are for permitted equipment. Those activities need to be added as well. Again, you have the list of activities that are exempt from reporting in your slides. Eugene went through it. You have any questions about a piece of equipment? Do you need to report emissions or not? Give us a call and we address your questions. So I guess at this point, you go through this exercise for all the equipment. You report all the emissions. But as you remember, I wanted to report non-routine emissions. So non-routine emission is going to appear down here if you click two boxes. One in the facility information that, hey, I have some non-routine emission I want to report. And then on a specific device that you want to report a non-routine emission for, you checked another box. Then when you go to the process of set, the tool, when you click on Add New, it's going to take you to this drop-down menu, and it's going to only show you the devices that you indicated I want to report non-routine emission for. Then you select that, and it also gives you the process. Let's say this boiler, when I want to start it up, when I want to shut it down, I only run it on natural gas. Then I select, okay, boiler A, process, natural gas. I want to report my startup and shutdown. And then use your best judgment. You have source tests, you have permit limits, whatever that is different than your normal operation. You get those emission factors and you use those to populate, I guess, the basically emissions. I guess for the sake of time, and it's pretty robust, you need to provide different information about what type of basically throughput you're providing, because non-routine emission, depending on what you have, can be different. It can be startup shutdown, it can be spill. So we try to address all the scenarios here. And if you have a specific question, again, this may not apply to a lot of you guys. I'm not gonna focus on this. We can talk after the presentation. So I guess I'm gonna go back and just deactivate the non-routine. So basically, I don't have to keep you waiting while I'm entering those information. So, and if I check it off now, it's gonna give a disclaimer, hey, some stuff gonna be deleted. Are you gonna be okay with it? I press yes. And then, see now, non-routine emission, oh, I forgot to save it. Always save. So uncheck, yes, save. Now under the report emission, see the non-routine emission disappear. Summaries. I pointed this out a couple times through the presentation that, hey, the tool gives you summaries for internal QA/QC. And believe me, this is how we, I guess when we perform our audits, this is the first place we go to catch discrepancies. First is on your criteria emissions. It gives you a great breakdown on permitted versus non-permitted equipment, but by I guess process or emission source categories. Remember I had external, internal combustion sources, and also by pollutant and by reclaim categories. So if you're a reclaim facility, you can kind of see what you reported as reclaim NOx or not reclaim NOx. As you see, I have a non-reclaim NOx emission here, and pretty much most of the things are reported as reclaim. And the blue numbers, the blue indicates that there's a link. You can click on it. If you click on it, it shows you all the devices and processes that contributed to that number. So if you, right off the bat, you see that you don't feel comfortable with that number, that's huge. Maybe there was a mistake. You can click on it and see where the discrepancy, where the problem is coming from. And by clicking on the blue link here, you can navigate directly to that device, so if there are corrections need to happen, you can just fix it. The second, I guess, summary section is toxic. This is significantly changed from last year due to the new toxic fee requirements that we have. I would, spend, some time here because I assume most of you guys, came here for the changes. So Eugene touched on the new toxic fee structures that we have. In the past, prior to 2019, the way toxic emission fees were calculated was based on a threshold and a dollar per pound value. Let's say if your emission was above the threshold of 2 pounds for benzene at your facility, for each pound of benzene, you had to pay X amount of dollars. Now, I guess for the toxic emission fees, we have 3 fee categories. First one is basic toxic fee. What that means is there are thresholds provided in Rule 301, Table 4. If you exceed any of those thresholds at your facility for one of the pollutants, the 66 pollutants on that list, your facility gets charged a basic toxic fee of $78.03, one time. The second category is cancer potency weighted emission fees. And it's calculated as following. The total emission for each pollutant, this is calculated per pollutant basis. For each pollutant, if you're exceeding the threshold, the total emission at your facility, calculated by cancer potency factor, multiplied by multi-pathway factor, I guess gives you cancer potency weighted emission, and for each cancer potency weighted emission, for each pound of it, the fee is $5. And this calculation is, I guess, done in more details in the table below. If you need to see that table that I pointed out, there's a link provided here to the Rule 301. You can click on it, go look for Table 4, and see what the thresholds are. But all the information there, we included here so you don't have to go there. So let me give you an example of benzene. So we're just going to go through all the fields here. So the first column is annual threshold. Remember I told you that there's a threshold? Here's the threshold. I guess I was right in my example. Benzene is 2 pounds. So if you exceed 2 pounds of benzene from all your devices at the facility, you trigger that threshold. So you need to calculate, or the tool calculates fees for you under this category. The annual emission reported for this device from all the sources, if I aggregate all the benzene you reported, put them in one place, it's going to be 2,163 pounds. And then for the cancer potency weighted emission calculation is only accounting for 2,144 of that. And I see puzzle faces. The reason for it is explained in the asterisk here. In this table, any asterisk comes with a comment box. So if you put your cursor on it, that comment box appears. So here is the difference. We have a toxic pollutant specific to diesel engines. We call it diesel particulate. When we calculate the cancer potency weighted emission for diesel particulate from the engines, the way the cancer potency factor is developed, it pretty much accounts for all the toxic pollutants. So if you get charged, for that toxic, which I have, remember, I actually had a couple diesel engines. If you have no diesel engine in your facility, these two numbers are gonna match. But who doesn't have a emergency generator that runs on diesel? Everybody has them. If you have a good size operation, you have it, or you have a fire pump somewhere. So that's where the discrepancy is coming from. So if we're charging you cancer potency weighted emission fees for diesel particulate. And if we come and charge you for the benzene, cadmium, all the other toxic from that diesel engine, it's double counting. So we need to back out the other pollutants from the fee calculation so you don't get charged twice. So this adjustment is done here. That's what this text box explains. So this is basically the number that is going to go to this formula here. Cancer potency emission factor is 0.1 for benzene, and multi-pathway factor is 1. This multiplied by this, multiplied by that, rounds to 214. You can just do the math, simple. Some of them are basically, the factors are different, you need a calculator. So if I go to the right, remember, what's the fee? $5. So $5 multiplied by 214 adds up to 1,070. To give you more options to, hey, I see that fee, you want to basically dig. Usually this is the job that your supervisors do. They want to see, hey, how much, you're $100,000, why? So the why answer is in the blue link here. It tells you, sorry, I have to kind of toggle back and forth. For benzene, which was here, right? It doesn't hold it. It shows 8. That means I have 8 devices that are contributing to that benzene emissions. If you click on it, it's going to give you another window. It's going to list all of them and their emissions. So you see, basically which one is the elephant in the room. And it also tells you, remember I told you that there is some, backing up for diesel particulate for diesel engines. It actually shows you true for the ones that needed to be backed out. So if it's false, that means that my external combustion, right off the bat, it's not an engine, so then it doesn't contribute to the diesel particulate. So we're giving you all the features so you can nitpick any particular fees and investigate where they're coming from. And flat rate device fee. This is the third fee. Remember I talked about thresholds? Any device for any of the pollutant, if it triggers the threshold for any of the pollutants for that device, there is a device fee of $170.95. Again, this table lists all the devices you reported, and it tells you in the blue link to the right, 11 represents 11 toxic pollutants. And if you click on it, it basically shows you all the pollutants that you reported for that device, how much the annual emission was, what the threshold is, if you're above the threshold or not. Formaldehyde for this device, annual emission reported was about 7,000. My threshold is 5. I triggered. 1 true here basically turns the fee on for that device. And for those of you that are subject to 2588 reporting, which is not that many, there's going to be a 4th table listing all the other toxic pollutants that you need to report. All the facilities report 66. If you're subject to 2588, you report 177. So the additional 120 pollutants are captured here, but they have no fees. And again, the blue link gives you more details where that total emission number is coming from. The next summary table is fees. I'm sure a lot of you are concerned, and most of your bosses want to see that part. So this is pretty much the same as previously, but we added, because the toxic fee structures change, we added a summary table that you can kind of see the breakdown of the fees. And so basically how much your flat device fee is, cancer potency weighted emissions, and I guess that reminds me I skip another table, which is table 2. For ammonia, and we call them ozone depleting compounds, the fee calculation is the same as before. A threshold $1 per pound fees. And so that is same as before, so which includes ammonia and certain ozone depleting compounds. And one thing that you need to keep in mind is the toxic fee threshold, the toxic fee functionality of the tool gets activated if your emission is above 4 tons for criteria toxic pollutants and 100 tons for CO, carbon monoxide, or if you're subject to 2588 regulation, or if you're subject to the state uniform reporting regulation. If you're not any of these, that fee section, it shows you what your emission fees would be, but it shows you all zeros. So it gives you, hey, if I would get pulled into those programs, I would pay this much. So that, that information is provided to you. So as I indicated, this table is new in this window. The other window is about installments. If your facility generates more than 10 tons of criteria emissions, the next year, let me give you a number. I guess you follow it better that way. In 2018, if you report more than 10 tons of criteria emissions, in July of 2019, you get a bill from district called semi-annual bill. And that semi-annual bill is basically half of your previous year emission that needs to be collected as installment toward your 2019 emissions. If you believe that you trigger 10 tons by a mistake, you can give us a call and you can report actual semi-annual emission report and fees and pay that fee. Call us if you're puzzled and you don't know why you got that bill. But for big operations, they're used to it. In the past, the number that was shown here was the amount that your facility was billed for. What that means is invoice was generated, sent to you. What happened, if it was paid or not, it's not shown here. This year, now that we're tied to our finance system, it shows how much installment you paid. So if you're used to paying installments and you see zero here, give us a call. You may have missed the bill. And so you're out of compliance because your account shows outstanding balances. And, and the rest is the same as before. And if you're running late, God forbid, I guess you need to enter a postmark date here because the tool knows you're late. It wants to calculate surcharges. So based on when you're going to basically postmark it or give it to the post office or FedEx or whatever, you enter that date so the tool calculates your surcharges accordingly. But hopefully that's not the case for you. So now I guess data validation. This is a feature that allows you to run a validation so to make sure there is no problem. Run the data validation. Depending on how many equipments you have, it takes that time. It takes according time. You get two type of issues here. If they're in orange color, that means it's a warning, meaning that hey, you can submit without taking any actions, but FYI, this information. Read those because it helps you polish more errors, not errors, but polish your emission data better. One of these is new this year. That's about ammonia emissions. We have 3 different toxic emission factors for ammonia, and that basically changes with different NOx emission control technology that you may have. If you have selective catalytic reduction, selective non-catalytic reduction, SCR, SNCR, because you inject ammonia to the stack, your ammonia emissions tend to be higher. The tool, when you select the default, it picks the highest one. This warning tells you, hey, these are the emission factors. If you don't agree, go fix it. And of course, less emissions translates into less fees, so you would like to, make that adjustments. And the other issue that I have that I guess I have 2 red ones. These are errors. Without fixing them, you cannot submit. The submit button even doesn't appear to you. So those need to be addressed. And usually with those errors, you're provided a link, which basically takes you where that problem occurred. The first one I expected, remember the operating status, I left it blank. So I click on that, and I go, this is blank. My facility was operational. Don't forget to save. And again, going back to data validation, run data validation, and it seems that emission factor data source was left blank for the device that I added. Click on it. See, it's blank. I'll go and fix it up. Okay. So now I shouldn't have any validation errors in red font. No links. So that means that if I go to report submission, I see a button to submit. If I had one of those errors, and it gives you, I have 0 errors and 0 warnings, this button wouldn't be here. Not pressing submit means you haven't submitted your report. And believe me, we get cases that facilities don't press the last button. And I guess a couple of these tabs are the same as before. If you would like to print reports, you use this window. There are 2 Excel reports are generated by a tool for people that like to use Excel and they like to filter and search. But one feature that, as Eugene indicated, is the online report submission feature, which is new, which I'm going to walk you through this exercise. Again, my validation came clear. The button is here. Now, as the point of time that I would like to get it over with this, right? So I press the generate AER. Let me take a step back. The logic behind here is when you submit your report, the report needs to be frozen, right? Because what's the point if you send something and from back end you're changing everything? So this generate report function, what it does is generate a report from everything in the tool and put it in standby mode for you to send. When you press send, the entire report gets locked. Why? Because we don't want you to go make changes. We want our report to be consistent with the record that you submit. It's similar to the fact that, hey, I generated a report, give it to my boss. It's sitting on my boss's desk. So if I go and make changes on my desk, my boss is not going to see it, right? So why I give that example, you see, because we get a lot of calls, people encounter problems, hey, how come I cannot change stuff? So when a report is generated, let's say you haven't submitted it. The report is generated and is in the standby mode. And you come across, hey, oh, I didn't catch this. I want to add it. For you to go back and make changes, this generated report needs to come out of the standby mode. You need to delete it. So you tell the tool, hey, I don't want to submit this. Get rid of it. I want to go make changes and generate a new one. So what I just explained, let me demonstrate it to you. Do you want to generate a report? Yes, I want to generate a report. It takes time. If your facility is humongous, it's going to take, way more time. So I have like 5, 6 devices. It shouldn't take that long. I guess more time for me to get water.
And maybe I can touch on something that's different about this process compared to previous years. If you had submitted a report, you're going to get a status that says for that particular year, completed or submitted. Before the deadline, you were able to call us and unlock the report so then you can go back and make any changes. That is no longer possible. With this new feature, again, it freezes the report. It's going to treat your submission, freezes it, locks it down. Once it's submitted, it's done. So we're not going to be able to unlock the report. Instead, we're going to have a feature available for you to do an electronic amendment, which Monty will go over towards the end of the presentation. So just kind of giving you that nuance, because I know that some of you have reported in the past, that's what's going to be different for this year.
Thanks, Eugene. So once you get to this page, that means report is generated. Your package is on your boss's disk. So what the tool generate is provided to you here. It generates a PDF report, which is what you're used to seeing, whatever that you have in the report, PDF. And also it generates 2 Excel files. Remember we had Excel reports here? It also gives us that because those contain more information than the PDF report. PDF report is more like a summary for your boss to review. Excel reports are basically everything, every single piece of information that you have in the tool is captured in Excel reports. That's why we generate them. So now, if I go, let's say I forget what I just explained to you. Oh, I catch a mistake. I opened this PDF. I saw a number, and let me just click on the PDF while it's okay. Good thing it didn't take. So this is the summary report, PDF report. Let's say your boss, reviewed this, right, and then had some comments, some throughput wasn't correct or whatever. If you come back to the tool, forgetting about that whole generating report concept, let me go. Let's say the boiler A that I added. So I guess this is the one with digester gas. That's my boiler A. If I open it, and let's say my throughput was wrong, I want to change it. It doesn't let me. Why? Report is on boss's disk. You need to get the report back. So now, what you need to do is go to report submission, cancel generate report. That means get it out of that standby mode. Now I want to cancel it. It asks, do you want to cancel it? Yes, I want to cancel it. I want to make changes. And it says the generated report was canceled. Then if you go back to any of these, you can make changes. And because the server I'm using is used for test purposes, if you go to your live tool, if you try, let's say if it's in that generated report status, when you try to change something, when you click on the field, it opens an error message telling you that you cannot make changes. What that error means is that you have your generated report. You need to cancel it first, then you can make any changes. But this one, because it's a different server, that functionality is not activated here. It just blocks you, but it doesn't tell you why. But what you see, it tells you why. So let's say all the changes are done. Now I want to generate a report. Boss approved it. Now from boss's desk, needs to be sent to AQMD. I guess the tool wants me to hydrate. All right. For you to submit, there are a bunch of checkboxes, meaning that by checking those, you're claiming that you've read all the different components of the report that is being electronically submitted. So first one is the PDF. There's a checkbox for that. The Excel, checkbox for that. So basically, you're indicating you read it, you agree with it. And there is this certification statement. We recommend you read it fully. It's not that long. It's not your credit, like your credit card. There are thousands of pages. So basically, the way the submittal function works, for you to submit, you need your PIN, facility PIN, and you need your password. Your consultant can submit it. You can submit it with, if you have those information. By putting these statements that you acknowledge that, hey, I am the person that is supposed to submit this. I have the authority. I'm the authorized person. And certain other, different disclaimers. So do read this and make sure when you press submit, you're the right person to submit because you have that capability, but make sure you're the right person. There are two acknowledgement, check boxes. So it adds up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You miss one, it's going to give you an error message. And then now here I have to basically enter my password. So by having your password entered here, the tool is going to know, we can actually tell who submitted the report. And I'm going to enter my PIN. Certify and submit. Do you want to submit? Yes, I do. All right. Once the submittal is completed, your report of status, this submittal page, always toward the end of it, has the current status and prior statuses. So basically it gives you the good snapshot of what happened with this report. From the beginning of the time that this report was available, pretty much for most of you guys, this should indicate, I guess January 1st or some date in December. And that's the available status. That we uploaded this report for 2019. The first date that someone touched this, which the working status was changed from available to work in progress, and the report status ready for review, which is basically when I remember I generated a report, and when that timestamp gets recorded too, and then the time you submit it. So pretty much all your activities are recorded. And you can kind of see, the reason for this is because the amendment part is electronic. You can, follow, let's say I submitted February of 2020, and then 5 years later, there were like 3, 4, or 5 amendments every year. Hopefully that's not the case. You did a good job the first year, but then you can basically see what happened to this report. And then when the report is submitted, it gives you all the links for stuff that you submitted. So basically what we have in our record are shown here for that status. It also shows you, again, I was just playing around with the tool. Hopefully that's not the case for you guys to pay $83,000. Your boss is going to have a heart attack. Some bosses are used to it. The major facilities may actually pay quite a bit of numbers, but their cash flow is high, so that's why they're not going to have a heart attack. But as far as the submittal, the tool provides you 2 options. If you want to submit the payment electronically, you can use this link, or this button. Or if you like your payment to be submitted, same as before with the check, it gives you basically a voucher to print, because you cannot just send a check in. You need to basically indicate what it's for. This voucher is provided here. You click on it. It opens a 2-pager for you, which tells you the invoice number. So our finance, once they get the check, they know what it is for. And basically disclaimer which addresses, depending on the delivery service you're using, needs to be sent. And also that information is provided here. If you're using US mail, this address. If you're using carrier service, for example, FedEx, this. If you want to hand it in, if you want to come and see us at the AQMD in Diamond Bar, this is the address. But now let's say I'm really computer savvy. I want to use the, the online payment functionality. You click on this link. Now it takes you to our finance section. It gives you the option of credit card, e-check. I'm going to use credit card to remind you that using credit card, I guess, has that convenient fee of 2.25%. So my total emission fees were $83,648. Yes, I would like to check out. So it's similar to any online, account, Amazon, whatever you use to purchase stuff. It prompts you to a page to enter your credit card information. The email address is for you to receive a confirmation, so we definitely recommend you to enter that information. Hopefully I entered everything correctly. Okay, my credit card number wasn't right. Actually, I forgot the expiration date. So let's say March. So it gives you a list of term of the payments. Again, this is not that long, so the first year maybe you want to read it to see what you're agreeing to. Then you check that you agree with the condition above, continue. It shows you basically an overview of your payment. Credit card comes with this fee. You can use e-check option. E-check option is basically you enter your bank routing and account number and your billing information. So instead of you sending a check, it uses your account information to wire that money to AQMD, and that doesn't come with that convenient fee. So now, let's say I'm okay with that payment. I proceed with the payment. Then it brings you to this page, which tells you, okay, payment, thank you for your payment. So the payment was submitted. You can see a PDF version of this document if you'd like to save it for record, or you print it. And then you press finish. By pressing finish, you come out of our finance, come back to the tool. Now, remember it was yellow with the $83,000. Now it's not. That indication tells you report is submitted, payment has been taken care of, you're good to go. For some of the facilities that, remember, there are some categories that you need to meet, so you need to pay fees, right? So let's say your facility is small, you don't have to pay fees. You don't need to go through the payment because you don't owe any fees. So right off the bat, you see this after your submittal. And now here it gets, I get to the last new feature. If you would like to amend the report, you submitted the report, payment is paid, everything is done. Now you realize that you need to make a change to the report you submitted. Exactly. Then in the past, what you needed to do, you had to mark up a form and send it in via mail. Now you don't have to. You can go to the tool. You don't have to. That option is not available. You need to use this. So what you need to do is you need to request for amendment. So basically, once the report is submitted, the tool is locked. You cannot make any changes. So you need to request for an amendment so we unlock the tool for you to make the changes. You select request for amendment. So the tool is going to show all the existing report as of the time that you ask for changes to be made. It also asks you to enter an explanation of why you would like to change your numbers or your report. And we recommend you to be as descriptive as possible, so we can help you out if no amendment needs to happen before unlocking the tool for you. And then let's say throughput, digester gas needs to be updated. But be more descriptive. When you click on the request button, what happens is we receive an email from the tool, and I guess if I go take one step back, once you're also submit your report, I guess I'm in the process of requesting an amendment. Let's say if I go there and cancel that. I would like to just I just want to show you. Let me cancel the amendment. So once you submit, that's one thing I forgot. The status is submitted, right? Then let's say I want to go to this report, I want to amend it, I want to make changes. You go to report submission, which is the last point of the process. You request amendment. I'm not going to, type it again, but let's say we say test. So you explain what you want to do, and then you request an amendment. The tool asks you, do you want to submit amendment? You say yes. So then it changes the status that then a request is waiting for AQMD. And if I go to the main facility page, it shows request amendment. So meaning that, hey, requested to amend, it's basically waiting for AQMD to approve your request and unlock the tool. So then, so that's basically, this is not your interface, this is my interface. So I go and log into my account. I see that you submitted a request, and I'll see the description. And I basically provide instruction to my staff. I assign it to one of my staff. I'm going to select Winco, our engineer at our group, and I select approve. Okay, and then I give them instruction. Because they get an email, so I don't want them to take this as real amendment request. So and then I approve it. So what happens is after I approve, if I refresh this, you're back to before submittal. Not quiet. Remember, you have a status here that tracks everything that you've done. It shows you requested for amendment, this date, this time. Now this is the status. It's open for amendment. If you access the main page, the status open for amendment. Now you can basically proceed with your amendment, make the changes, and the submittal is going to be the same as before, except the fact that that online payment feature is only available for your initial submittal. For the amendment, if it turns out that there were underpayments, you need to calculate that, and then you need to submit a payment via check for that. But we can help you out with basically making that payment for the amendments. But pretty much, if you would like to basically proceed with the payment option, the online payment option, you can basically do A to Z via web. You don't need to send in anything, except for the amendment that you need to figure out the payment. We can help you out with even paying that online as well. So just going through my notes, and I guess this concludes the long demonstration. But the good thing is, because this is being webcasted, I try to be detailed, so you can access the recording. So if you don't remember, at least there are sparks in your head that, hey, he talked about this. You can go to the recording and see the demonstration part for that section, so you can basically replicate it in case of your facility. Now I would like to open it to any questions that you have about the process, applicability, and everything.
I just want to remind everyone too, when you don't have to feel that you have to ask the questions in front of the audience, if you have something about your facility, you can always come down here and talk to us. We're actually going to have the room until about 1 o'clock today, so we'll be here for about 2 hours to help you guys out.
And we have computers. You can sit down with one of our staff and go through your questions and details. Go ahead.
The supporting documentation that we have to submit with the report.
I'm sorry?
The supporting documentation.
Okay. I'm glad you you reminded me to show you that. So I guess supporting document, as far as your submittal, everything is done online. But we brought up the point that if you would like to attach something to your report, if you like to upload additional information, there is a button up here called Upload Supporting Documents. When you click on that, it opens this field that you can attach the electronic document. You can describe what it is, and you can provide valid from and valid to. Let's say the valid from is pretty much the date that you uploaded. Valid to option was provided there. Let's say you did a testing, but it's good for 3 years. Instead of uploading it every year, you can just, the first time you upload it, from that date on, you put the valid from. It's gonna be, let's say I'm gonna upload it today, I put it today's date, but it's good 3 years. Next testing is gonna happen in 3 years. That's what my permit says, right? So you make the valid to 3 years from now, so every report that document is applicable to, that piece of information is gonna appear, so you upload it once. If you would like to upload those for the submittal, we don't, you're not required. You're not required. But yes, but if you like to upload all that information, if you like to, the benefit of that is if down the line inspector comes and question you, you know that everything is there. But imagine if your facility is huge and then it's not required, but we recommend it. Go ahead.
Can we wait for the
If you
mic?
could wait for the mic.
If we upload the SDS, what would be the valid from and valid to date?
What you can do is, because you don't know when the manufacturer is going to change the SDS, right? What I recommend is valid from is required, right? It has an asterisk, so always you need to enter that. For the valid to, you can leave it blank, it's not required. So that piece of document is going to show up every report till the point of time that realize that, oh, they changed it. Then you can come to to this page, and any of these records, let's say this document, I added it, and I have this basically from upload date, valid from, let's say, you uploaded it, valid from is March of last year. Now I found out that the safety data sheet was changed, right? So then, effective yesterday, I have a new data sheet. You can come for the old one and modify it, put, let's say, yesterday date. So it's gonna, because that piece of document is still good for your previous reports, right?
Right.
So then you update it, then the tool is gonna basically, okay, so it took it. See, it puts that date.
Right.
Then you add a new one, you upload the new one. Now from February 4th, going on, again, you put the valid to blank for you to fill out when you get the new one.
Okay.
So that
okay.
way, the tool knows from what period to what period, what safety data sheet it needs to show up.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
We got a question over here.
If you're 6H exempt, do you still need to do all of this? I missed the VOC part. I'm not really 100% sure.
So when you say if your facility is exempt, are you, so if you haven't received a notification to report, or when we went over the criteria in the very beginning of who's required to report, basically if you exceed the thresholds for criteria pollutants, or if you're AB 2588 facility, or you're subject to the CTR, I don't want to say you're exempt, but we're basically not identifying you as a facility that needs to report for that calendar year. So if none of those have occurred, you don't have to worry about this.
Okay, yeah, because we have I got a notice that says that we could actually apply to become 6H exempt via the EPA.
Oh, okay. I think you might be talking about a different program. What's the program you were talking about? Something about?
I guess it's our online reporting. But I noticed that some of the six hazardous pollutants were in this reporting.
Right. There is several reporting programs at the district, so maybe I can go over with you. I can take a look at your notification letter and see if it's specific to this program, because it could be very well something else.
Okay.
Right. Question?
Do we have the ability to go back in history using through this tool to look at previous years?
Yes, all the reports are available, all your previous submittals are available. If you go to Access Facility, you can see all the submittals, and by clicking on Open, you can go to that report, and you can go to the facility report and see the reports. I'm glad you asked that question because all the new features, online features, are effective or good from 2019 going forward. If you go to 2018, 17, it's going to be, as before, everything has to be done, paper-based. But all the record or the information in the tool can be accessed. If the report is submitted, then you cannot make any changes. And prior to 2019 reporting, you have to send in, marked up forms to amend the data. And then on your behalf, we go and make the changes. So usually what you see in the system is what we have in the system and is the most updated information.
All right, question?
Yeah, it was mentioned earlier that to reset the user ID and password, we have to write an email.
Yes.
Is there any specific email to write to?
Yes, AER at AQMD.gov, letter A, ER, Annual Emission Reporting, AER, at AQMD.gov.
Okay.
Send us an email, provide us your facility ID, and that you would like to change your PIN. And usually, no problem, thank you. What we usually do is we for these action items, we would like you. We only implement changes requested by the facility. So use your basically email address for the company. So we know you're representing of the company. You're the person in charge, not the consultants. If a consultant sends us an email, hey, this facility changed this, that, we usually reach out to the facility contact. So we don't take any actions. So make sure you use your company email.
Yeah, as soon as we send the email, what's the turnaround time?
It's pretty quick. We have staff checking that email account, and then we'll take action because we understand that your security matters. So we'll get on it. Make sure you indicate it. I would like to in the subject of the email, we would like to change the PIN. So right off the bat, we know we got to take action, and then it's going to be quick.
Yeah, especially March 17th is just around the corner. So.
Yes. I guess changing it is we have a system to generate the PIN, and it's just a matter of entering a number into the tool. So it's really quick.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so if there are no more questions, well, thank you for attending. Again, we'll be opening up the floor down here. We'll have our staff to answer any questions you might have and also work on the computers with you. Thank you.
I wanted to log in on my computer because I went to last year and I have a problem. I don't know what I'm doing because last year I kind of rushed through it because it was my first year and I did the information in the first page, but I don't know what to do after that. I don't. It won't let me go to the next process.
Because I have several tools that are decommissioned.
Shows you that it imported the bag house, whatever.
Okay. So basically, and then from there you go start here. This one you have full authority. So this is your first view. And what you need to do is you added this one. Now you have to go into the whole.
And so this is just the more administrative information, so you just want to kind of scroll down, make sure everything's right regarding mailing, what is it, just your industrial type, contact information. You just kind of want to scroll through that, so you can make sure and verify that. The only thing, again, okay.
I was able to do this part, but when I got to that other part, I was gonna fix something.
Again, everything, as long as you don't submit it, everything is unviable, everything can be changed.
Okay, so like you said at the end.
Yeah, once you submit, that's when it's shut down. That's where my speech or paperwork things are wrong. So, for this, again, do you want to go through it right now, or do you kind of?
I want to go through it.
Okay, yeah, so, yeah.
Yes and no, because anything that you have that's permitted should already be in. I already went through it.
Oh, okay.
So you'll only be able to add,
Yeah.
unpermitted.
Just make sure everything's correct.
Yes.
So I go, because I haven't even been in here yet.
Sure.
Like, I
So
haven't
again,
been
this
in
the thing about
if I
it's
go
nice
in
about
there,
is that again, you support all the information in last year, so nothing changed.
my facility, I can, we should be.
Yeah, you should be in there. Let me
Oh, the only
see.
thing, go down.
That's gonna take it off the web tool. But yeah, so if you go in there and you put in the ID in there, all your permitted equipment should be in there.
But I have to make an account first.
There's two steps. You have to make a username.
I have that already,
Okay.
because I've,
Yeah.
for other reasons.
Okay, so when you go in there now, you'll get to after you put in your user ID and your password, you'll get to a section that says access facility, and then you can put in your ID and PIN number, and then you'll go in and you should see there should be that box that has exit reports, and then for you it should only say 2019.
Oh, you mean in this system?
Yeah.
Because they're already
Because
on the
only,
main page.
yeah,
like,
so there should be in previous ones, you'll see, you should see 2019.
Last year you didn't have any questions.
If you've been sent a letter, do you know if you've been sent a letter?
No.
Or you don't know?
No, I'm saying, no, we haven't.
Oh, you haven't been sent a letter?
No, so, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
If you haven't
Here,
been sent a letter.
how do we determine if we're part of the criteria or
That's correct. So,
2588? Because we're a university, right, so we have labs, we have
Sure.
generators, we have boilers, right? So, we have to somehow do an inventory to determine whether or not our emissions are above, when they weren't set in.
No, because we should tell you whether or not we think you should be involved. So we should either send you a letter or, in case you haven't, why don't you give me a call?
But we haven't, that I know of, unless
Yeah.
they did one from environmental health and safety, and you're the ones who do all the permits.
Yeah,
and,
so you
inspections.
yeah, so you shouldn't have if you haven't received, but there's always a chance to lost an email. So give me a call or send me an email, and I'll check for you, and I'll send you an email back whether or not you
Wouldn't that be on our main, like, you know, when you put your facility ID in and then it says things that haven't been done or answered or whatever,
Well,
should that
if
be
you're
on
not even
there?
in there, you wouldn't be able to do that.
Because what it
You
says
wouldn't have
on,
a
under AER, it has records back from 2009 under the AER, and it says no data, no data, no data, no data, no data. All those years from 2009.
Well, it could be two things. It could be that you never asked, but also like if you were asked and you never put data, it will also say no.
Oh, you mean it would say something if we had asked, like, oh, exempt or something like that?
No. We won't say it. We'll all say no data, so you won't know for sure. And that's what checks.
If you were never asked.
No, if you guys were never asked to put it.
Okay, right.
So if we
and
never sent you a letter.
I don't think we were ever asked, but the systems, the chancellor office, I have an old, let me show you. It's an inventory that was done by a consultant, and it was a group of universities that the trustees decided to hire this consultant for. But look at the dates, it's 1990. 92 or something like that. It's very old. 1995. 2304. Well, we have two. And that was the other question I was going to ask, because we have like campus and Palm Desert that's very small. It only has like 4 buildings.
Okay, let me get my.
And I don't have that ID.
And then we went to open.
No, you would go to reference. So open is if you this is actually right there. If for some reason this was removed or this is there was not. This is where you would kind of
Man, you guys need like a cone on that or something.
reference is where you report. So this is usually if nothing changed, you don't really have to mention. You only put like reference. So hopefully this is fine.
Yes, because when I talked to the guy, he said that they're two different factors, basically. So I wouldn't have to say.
I have no idea why I asked them to do this thing, but
Well, can we put in the thing for the sand?
that's what I'm saying. I'm trying to access that. So, but it looks like basically when he clicked on these here, gives you general. If you click on reference, they're getting you want to do P1 and P2, so you want to open this one, edit it, and then come back to it and edit this P2. But when we open this sand, every person that you actually that will be left blank. So that I think you guys wait. So that would be and then
In the same way with women.
so I don't know why it's not working. So that'll just this one is like I'm not sure if they just log for it. Give you a software thinking slow or something. But it always at this point, that's as far as I can take you. Unfortunately.
So is the ID, the password, you put it in that for the facility?
Being really slow. We can just wait for it. Or okay.
But
You
your
know,
facility,
here's my next thing
password.
is when after I put that material in,
It wouldn't
that's
be you
basically
personally,
my
it's
report.
right. Right. So
And,
if
you
you're
know,
trying to,
like,
now, unless you are actually a
like last
business.
year, when I did it,
Let me see if we
Personal
go
information,
to last year's and
you'd have
see
to have a
I can
facility.
show you how it looked like so this has registered.
So if you're, if you know what the facility password is, and you set it in, put that in, and that's what it's gonna be. It's the facility.
Again, you go to commission sources, go to reference, or you can then open the process for P1.
The password it should be for the facility. Any other people
you represent the facility, right, that way I can look at it.
But no, but it doesn't matter. You should represent the facility. The password is called facility. You have to represent it. Because once you get the password, for like facility, it's you put all the information that's represented.
So here's what.
Now, when you register the facility, did it not get the password?
I did not register.
Oh, yeah, no. Okay, no. So you have to register the facility itself. So all this information.
Well, he was checking to see why this thing was not, he said maybe
Yeah, because I can't even access to